Hello everybody, this is Mimi the Deku, and welcome back to another episode of the Deku podcast that is special. If you were there for the special episode of 1, you know that these are the episodes that I just really kind of wing it. I'm always winging it when I go over the manga in the regular Deku podcast episodes, but this one, super winging it because I don't have the book in front of me. I don't even have like specific moments that I'm referencing off of. I'm just literally using my Deku database and just going off of that. The reason why we're doing another Deku special episode is because life is incredibly ironic for the second time. You know, it's like, it's funny the first time, but then the second time is like, wow, life, you didn't have to do that. So, if you didn't know, or didn't get a chance to listen to the first episode, or didn't want to because you're not caught up with the manga, it was an episode about Deku and the concept of overworking. And I had wanted to put that one out because I had just recently experienced the consequences of overworking myself, and my body kind of gave out. More strictly speaking, it was like my body, it was like my physical body, but like from my brain. There was like a day and then like a week where like I was like both anxious and depressed and like numb, but it wasn't like the worst it's ever been, but it was like all at once. So I was just really confused and I wasn't very functional, but I was able to see that it was a sign from my body to slow down, otherwise, you know, more bad things could happen. And I remember I ended up overworking again to make that episode. I mean, I also ended up pushing the deadline, and I put the episode out on a Monday. But then after that, I had just been taking it easy. I stopped all the projects I've been working on. There's like a secret comic project I've been working on. It's Deku related, but I stopped that. And I even stopped drawing as much, just to kind of like give myself the space to reflect on the life I've been living, and try to like focus what I want to do going forward in a way that, you know, I wouldn't burn out / overwork myself to like the edge of a cliff again. I mean, it's likely that, you know, I'll burn out again, but I was trying to do my best to you know, prevent that. But then I was able to, you know, get by in July fine, and I, you know, drew things here and there, but again, still wasn't working on projects. And then the first week of August came, and I was like, all right, this weekend I'm gonna work on the Deku podcast episode 5 because I have both audio files, and you know what? I don't think I want to re-record it. I think I already have the content. I'm just gonna like edit it and like make it look good. Like, we just need a few, you know, just a few days to work on it. It'll be fun, you know. It'll still count as me not working because Deku podcast is like this. It's like a funsy thing for me. I'm not supposed to take it that seriously. And then on August 2nd, I woke up after a night of not sleeping because my arms were in pain and my hands were in pain. And actually, the previous week I was having trouble at my day job. I, you know, have to like type and like use the mouse for my day job. It's like a computer job, computer desk job. And yeah, I was just like, you know what, this is nothing. I just maybe need a rest, you know. And like I rested on the weekend. But then August 2nd, I woke up and everything was in pain, and I was like freaking out, and like, you know, I called in sick to work, and then I, you know, rolled myself to the doctor's office, you know, because it was that bad, and I was like freaking out. I'm like, oh no, I can't like be developing like carpal tunnel syndrome or whatever, or arthritis, because I'm an artist and like all my hobbies involve the computer, and like, yeah. I talked to the doctor and they said I have cubital tunnel syndrome, and luckily it's not severe, but, like a big but, like, don't overdo it. You gotta take it easy. You need to take medication and you need to do physical therapy. And I remember hearing that and I was just like, no, I cannot believe this has happened to me. And after I did a podcast and not overworking, like, I thought I was doing so good in July. So anyway, that's the update about me. But we all know that I'm not what's important here. What's important here is the BKDK ship. And since the first episode was about Deku, I decided that the second episode is going to be about Kacchan. And I decided, I'm going to talk about Kacchan, like his character development arc. I mean, there's a lot that we can talk about, but what I wanted to talk about was like his perspective from Deku versus Kacchan, which is going to be the focal point of episode 5 whenever that comes out, whenever my arms can actually deal with typing on the keyboard and stuff, and I don't have to use a PS4 controller as my mouse. But I wanted to focus on his arc and how he perceives himself, and how it stems from a high achieving, overachieving background. So yeah, let's see if I can succinctly talk about Kacchan under an hour. Okay, so this, I'm gonna presume that for this special episode, we're gonna go into spoilers, but I'm probably not gonna go that far. I'll probably stop talking about Kacchan up until Deku vs. Kacchan 2, because I think after that, his character development kind of I don't want to say plateau, because that's not exactly right. He keeps developing, and he obviously still has a conflict with himself and Deku that doesn't get resolved, or is still not being resolved completely, right? Boku no Hero Academia has not ended yet, but that's kind of the turning point, and I think that's when his worldview shifts. So we're gonna stop there. But with that said, let's start talking about him. So Kacchan, as we all know, he's a poopy head. In the beginning, poopy head, absolute poopy head. He's this explosive little man with small dick energy. Yeah, that's right, I said that, Kacchan. What are you gonna do about it? In such that he's insecure about himself, but in a way where it's he has to posture to everyone that he is not in fact insecure, and the one he postures to the most is what he dubs the most useless person, Deku. And if you listen to the first two episodes of the BKDK podcast, you may remember that I kind of argued that the reason why Kacchan feels this way is because he has a very specific worldview that society has raised him to believe in, and also believe that he belongs in, and this is the logic of the world, and anything that's outside of this logic of the world is incorrect. So to recap, the logic of the world is that this is a hero society, and the strongest, most smartest, most capable, most admirable people in the society are heroes. And a hero, by definition, in the society is someone with a quirk who uses it to save or win and rescue people. For him, what's most important is that a hero wins over villains. So there's a bad guy, and they beat the bad guy, and then boom, yeah, we're good. Everyone's happy. For him, that's what being a hero is. And he has the power that is necessary in order to win. And that's what he thinks, right? That's what everybody tells him, that's what he is, or that's what he's gonna be in the future. They point to how amazing his quirk is, and they point to how he's smart too. So it's not just his quirk, but he's smart, and he's like a quick thinker, and we don't really see this, but I think there's also like a bit of like an economic like difference between him and Deku. I think Kacchan might be actually from like a wealthier class or economic bracket, because his parents live in a really nice house versus Deku's and Inko's apartment. So it's like, this is basically a kid who has the resources to be really great, and he also happens to be, born with like features that this society also really thinks is great. In contrast to Deku, who, doesn't have those resources. He doesn't even have a dad. We don't even know anything about his dad. We know his mom is, trying her best. She's a single mom, but like she doesn't really have the resources to like really guide her son in this hero society. She's not even a hero. She doesn't even like, I don't know, encourage him to be a hero. So he doesn't even have like any support from anything. It's just him, and his ideals. And then there's the fact that he and Deku go to Aldera Middle School, which seems to be a public school, and I think it's odd that like he and Deku go to that school when Kacchan is clearly like he's wealthier and he's smarter or whatever. Maybe it was just like, they're in the area, whatever, Kacchan can be there. But because he kind of has so much going from him, it's like the environment feeds into his ego. So essentially, and this is a phrase that I'm taking from an old physics teacher of mine in high school, he becomes a huge fish in a puddle. The common phrase is a big fish in a pond. No. I would argue that Kacchan is a big fish in a puddle, which means that yes, he is great. Yes, he is special. But he feels and seems that special because of the environment he's in. Like, everybody around him, yeah, they want to be heroes, but like, look, we got one guy who like makes his fingers long. I think one guy that flies. Like, not bad, but you guys clearly aren't gonna be the next All Might, and like none of them, were able to read kanji at like a really young age, so it's like he's gold in like a pile of turd, and that's a problem. I don't know if any of my listeners have ever been a big fish in a puddle, but no matter how much people warn you that, like, say for example, right, in the real society, if you go from a high school, you go to like college. In the US, you go to college, community college or university. But the point is that like, if you come from like a high school that's not so great into like a big university, you're gonna have culture shock. And you're gonna essentially figure out that like, I was a big shot in high school, but that was high school. And Kacchan like finds this out after Deku versus Kacchan won. Basically, Deku beats him, and then Kacchan is just like in horror, like not only realizing that, oh my god, like not only is he having a crisis about Deku, and like, his brain is just like, I cannot comprehend, like, I'm so obsessed with this kid, and yet like he's like totally a different person. So not only does he have that, but he has to watch as the peers around him, who he definitely dismissed as like nobodies, especially because like for example, like throwing the ball, he was selected by Aizawa to kind of be that example, and he did really well, and everyone was like, oh my god, and he sees that his peers are just as special as him, if not like better. Like, when he sees Todoroki, he's just like, oh my god, now if I was like a little bit, got a little bit of cash, well, this kid, clearly, is in another level. Like, he's the son of Endeavor, although I don't know if anybody knows that, but like, there's that, and then like for sure the power, like his quirk, like Kacchan's quirk, yeah, pretty amazing. But okay, a guy who can summon ice, okay, well, just from nothing. Kacchan has to sweat in order to make explosions. It's not even like fire. It's just literally like I gotta sweat and I gotta make boom booms, right? But Todoroki is just like, I'm gonna summon ice from nowhere, and it's like a really huge volume of ice too. Or like there's Yaoyorozu, he calls her ponytail. He's just like, oh my god, like she's smart, and she said basically I was really bad at my combat, and like, damn it, you're right. Oh my god, I can't believe I missed that. Like, his peers are here, and like they're good. Oh, and then it's like there's the fact that it's like Todoroki, Yaoyorozu, they were in by recommendation. You know, it's not even just like, yeah, they were good. They're like, these kids literally like skipped the exam. They're like, nah, they're already good. We don't need to examine them. They're great. So all this to say, wrapping it back to the metaphor, Kacchan went from being gold in a pile of turd to being gold in like a school full of gold. And like the gold is also bigger. Like he's like a little gold nugget, and then like Yaoyorozu and Todoroki are like giant gold bars. So I think that for him starts him on this path of, or starts him on this viewpoint that he's failing. And I know this sounds like like a wild interpretation, but hear me out. I'm gonna walk you through this interpretation, and maybe by the end of it you'll be with me. But I think coupled with Deku versus Kacchan 1, that day was failure number 1 for him. And you know why it's failure? Because all his life, remember, he is a big shot. Now all of a sudden, he's not a big shot anymore. In fact, he's like nobody. He's just another good UA kid. You know, he's not excelling. He's not overachieving. For him in the past, overachieving and like besting everyone, that was a win. But, you know, first time he gets to do some action in UA, he didn't beat anyone. He didn't even beat Deku. So failure number 1. And then I think the next big moment is when I feel like I'm skipping things, but the next big moment that comes to mind is when Deku and Kacchan have to team up together. I think that's kind of like a turning point. But I think I remember he's kind of like watching Deku closely at that time, and he's like really struggling with the idea of like, if I collaborate with Deku, you know, I'd rather die. I'd rather die than collaborate with Deku, because in his mind, if he doesn't win by himself, it's a failure. And in that arc, we do see him like, he doesn't really express feelings like, oh yeah, this is a failure, but it's like that mindset is there, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't want to be with Deku, because then he'd rather not collaborate with Deku. You know, if he had to collaborate with Deku, he'd rather lose. But you see how like he was already thinking in terms of like win and lose, and like I know that's like his character, but like you see how it's like he feels like he couldn't best Deku in the beginning. And he's behind everyone, so he needs to work harder to beat everyone, to kind of get back up there. But every time he can't do that, it's just a blow to his ego. So that's why it was, not only was it like a pivotal moment in the Baku-Deku relationship, but it was a pivotal moment for him to be like, okay, like, yes, it's not so black and white. Like, I can't do everything by myself, you know? I'm trying to think. Before that, there was the USJ incident. Was there any moment of failure in there? You have to know that, like, I kind of had this, like, theory, like, you know, kind of simmering in my mind for a while, and, like, I articulated it to some friends before. But it's been a very long time, so now I'm just kind of like, oh no, cobwebs. But in the USJ, the League of Villains come by, and Kacchan, he's able to fend off people and stuff. I think that one was kind of like an okay moment for him, like, it just, you know, alright, we gotta get by. But I think, oh yes! how could I forget the tournament arc? I think that's either before or after the Deku and Kacchan collaboration. But that definitely was another moment of failure. Okay, so ignore USJ. Okay, and I know that's kind of bad if I'm trying to argue that Kacchan is kind of racking up failures. But like that one, I kind of feel like it's not like versus. He's not going against his classmates. That one was like class versus villain. So that's why I can kind of like cut it out. But okay, if we're talking about Kacchan doing well in UA, we have Deku versus Kacchan 1. So we count that as a failure. And then we have the tournament arc. And, you know, that's him versus classmates and versus Deku. And if you remember, he doesn't lose to Uraraka. But again, he's kind of like, you know, okay, I fought and I won, but it was not an easy fight, okay? And it's kind of like reinforcing that, like, yeah, I gotta stay on my, on my guard. Oh, and if you remember, he even does the thing, and Deku comments on this, where he kind of forces pressure on himself. I'm gonna be number 1 in this tournament. And the reason why he does that is because it's kind of like he needs to win. He already lost once. He's like, I cannot afford to do that again. I gotta work. If I make it that this is the goal, then I have to do it. You know, like that's just how he works. You know, like there is no like I'll try again next time. There is black and white. There is 1 or 0. I either win or I don't win. So he was kind of like trying to make it like a fact. I'm gonna win. I am the winner. And then he just has to get to that point. So that's why he takes Uraraka seriously, because he's like, no chance of, you know, like letting himself lose again. Like, he didn't really underestimate Deku. He never underestimates Deku, and he doesn't really underestimate people. But it's kind of like he now understands that, okay, if I really don't work hard, if I just take like even like a bit of you know, a little cockiness, if I let it get to my head, I'm not gonna win. You know, that's why, you know, he fights, you know, Uraraka, takes her seriously and whatever. But then if you remember, after Todoroki fights Deku, he fights Todoroki, and I think he definitely takes it as a failure, because it wasn't him who got him to use his full powers, which was ice and fire. That was Deku. So yet again, he lost to Deku indirectly, and you know, it's not satisfactory. Like, he was supposed to prove to himself that even though all my classmates are just as good as me, I can do it. I don't need no handouts. I don't need no disadvantages, you know, from the other side or an advantage on my side. Like, this was supposed to be a redeeming moment for him. But Deku kind of, like, in his mind, kind of stole that away. And that's why it meant nothing to him. So now he has failure number 2. And then after that, we get the, you know, Deku and Kacchan collaboration, I think. And that one is kind of like, you know, I think the narration, the plot, trying to like change that viewpoint in his mind. But it's kind of more of like I would call that a draw. You know, like he is kind of like going up against Deku, and then he concedes because he has to like technically win. But I think he might, you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, it could still be considered a failure for him because he didn't win by himself, right? So it's like a draw failure. But even if we count that one out, the next moment that I think, you know, backs up this theory that like Kacchan just has a string of failures is the Camino arc. So, you know, they go to the, you know, what is it? They go on this trip, right? And then like they're training and stuff in the forest, and then the League of Villains attack, and he gets kidnapped, and he can't really escape on his own, you know, and he has to be forced into this damsel in distress role. And it's like, it's kind of like a repeat of USJ, where it's like, okay, you know, it's not really the time to be fighting against your classmates and stuff. And like he, you know, despite everything he says out of his mouth, he understands that, and that's why he goes along with them. But then, you know, he gets captured. But then he sees Deku, right? As he leaves, and he sees Deku, and that terrifies him, that because Deku, he has broken arms and he's going after him, and he's like, don't come, right? And he kind of resigns himself to his fate, and then he gets kidnapped, and then dragged back to the bar where the League of Villains are, and he tries to survive, and he's not thinking of winning or failing right now or anything. He's just like, I gotta get out of here, right? But then I think it comes back when All Might comes to save him, and Deku is right next to him, and he just is like, damn, I've been working so hard, and this is what I have to show for it. Oh wait, hold up. This podcast episode's gonna be a mess, but I forgot another thing, the internship arc, right? So this was after the tournament? Yeah, this is after the tournament. Remember, okay, here's another failure point. When they come back from the internships, and one, Kacchan doesn't really understand Blue Genius, but two, when they come back and they kind of show off what they learn, he sees Deku has improved a lot again, and in fact, Deku has started repurposing Kacchan's movements into his own. It makes him again feel like a failure. I'm trying hard. For him, he's just okay. His personality is that yes, he's a genius. Yes, he had good resources, but I guess the shonen / good thing about him is that he doesn't just kind of mule over things. He's always reflecting, but silently, and he doesn't tell anyone. And he always works hard to try to improve himself. But that's also because he started out with such a high standard, in a puddle. Remember, he was a big shot in a small puddle. So he's just desperately trying to redeem that state, by improving himself. He can still be I'm still good. I'm still amazing. I just need to work a little harder, right? But seeing Deku kind of makes him feel damn, I worked hard, but it wasn't good enough, right? Because Deku's better in his eyes. And then then we get the coming arc, and then that's when we see that not only did he kind of fail to get himself out of the situation, even though it's you can't, right? You're a kid. But it's kind of no one ever told him, really, aside from All Might, right? After Deku versus Kacchan 1 happened. But aside from that, no one ever came to him and tried to I guess address this discontent he's been feeling with himself. He's just had to barrel with it and deal with it by himself. Oh yeah, this culture shock, I just have to deal with it. I just, yeah, whatever, But I think seeing All Might, his hero, in his eyes, give up power to save him because he couldn't do it himself, he couldn't even help himself, that was a breaking point. But as you remember, he doesn't actually break until the license arc, and that was the final blow to the string of failures. Okay, one, remember, Deku versus Kacchan 1. He failed to best Deku, and he learned that, oh my god, I'm actually, not that big. I'm really not that big. Before, he always had this feeling, Deku is scary, and if he had a quirk, he probably would best me. But, he could dismiss it because Deku had no quirk. And then, he just kind of looked at, everyone else, right? His peers. And, you're all, nobodies, right? Clearly, I'm a shonen protagonist. But then he goes to UA. And not only does Deku best him, it's, everybody there, got in by recommendation. Or they have, really fascinating quirks. And they're really smart. They're here to succeed in the UA hero course. No matter their personalities. They're all here. And they're all here to succeed. He's not a big shot anymore. So he's okay, I just gotta work harder. And then tournament arc, that comes around, this is his chance to redeem himself. So he kind of puts a condition on himself to make it happen. Because if he makes it happen, yeah, nothing wrong ever happened. He had a little blip, but he's still amazing. But then it turned out that he didn't. He couldn't beat Todoroki, who was to his eyes, the strongest, member of the class. Because Deku kind of beat him to it. So he beat him in the first race. And then he beat him again with Todoroki, getting Todoroki to use a full power on him. and not Kacchan. So, okay, that's failure number 2. Okay, then USJ happens or whatever. And then, like, that's kind of a draw because he's not really, like, beating Class 1A. He's just trying to make sure that everybody survives, you know, as is everyone is doing. So, okay, draw. That's fine. But still kind of, like, you know, simmering, like, the 2 failures. He's the 2 big failures, you know, that we have. And then we have the internship arc. I might have messed up the timeline there, but the point is, after tournament, we have the internship arc. And, like, he does his best, you know, he tries to take it seriously, because it's like, okay, this is an internship, you know, I just picked the best one or whatever, but he doesn't really understand his mentor, and when he comes back, it really beats into his head that he didn't understand anything from his internship. In fact, he felt like he wasted his time because he didn't understand anything, and he improved nothing, because when he sees Deku has just continued to kind of move on with his life, and, you know, Kacchan hasn't. So it's like, okay, alright. Failure number... How many failures do I have? 1, 2, 3. I have failure number 3. And then they have Deku and Kacchan, you know, collaboration. Almost could be a draw, but might as well count as a failure because he couldn't pass this exam without relying on Deku, who he's been kind of comparing his progress to. Deku's been, like, succeeding. He's been winning everything, and Kacchan has not been winning anything, so he's just, like, frustrated. So that's why he's just like, you know, Deku, like, I just need you to shut up, like, just stop, like, I'm telling you that I'm constipated with my emotions, and, like, it's inferiority complex, like, you're really not helping, and that's why he just, you know, and hits his, you know, nose, and then whatever. He passes out anyway when they quote unquote win. So okay, whatever. Okay, that one's like a failure / draw, maybe dependent on his mood. And then they have the Kamino arc, and, you know, that was a failure because it's a really big failure because his hero lost his powers to save him. He couldn't save himself. You know, like, I'm pretty sure he knew that, like, he couldn't save himself, but, like, he could have done more at least. Maybe, like, not have caused All Might to use up his powers. You know, if he was a little bit stronger, he could have helped out more, you know? And, of course, this is, like, him thinking this because he doesn't know about All Might's condition. He doesn't know about Deku, so he's filling in the blanks the best that he can. And then the license, you know, getting the hero license arc. When he, like, despite, like, a few, you know, despite a little bit of the progress he's made, he, you know, can't get a license. He and Todoroki don't get a license, but Deku does. And that's why he's just like, I've had it. I've been having to deal with what I've perceived as failures, you know, since my entire time in UA. Like, I just cannot get a win. And Deku, the one person who I never thought I would have to compete with in UA, is here, and he's doing great. He got a hero license. Like, what the hell? You know? And that's why he explodes. It literally, Deku vs. Kacchan 2 was literally a moment where he was just like, I can't do this on my own anymore. And he has to turn to the one person who has known him all his life. You know, even though, you know, he pushed him around, beat him up, I don't know, bullied him, like, whatever, however you want to spit it, regardless of how I interpret Kacchan and, like, Deku's relationship, you know, despite how negative their relationship definitely was in Aldera, the fact is that they're Osana Najimi. Deku knows Kacchan the best. They grew up together. They're now going to high school together. They're rivals because, you know, they both admire All Might. And they're just so intertwined with each other that he's just like, who else can he actually go to? And if any of you have the manga, if you remember, right before they fight, there's, like, some, you know, panels of, like, the 4 people that went to go save Kacchan. It's Horikoshi trying to tell you that he didn't go to any of these people who wanted to save, you know, Kacchan a lot. Just, you know, maybe not as much as Deku, but, like, they wanted enough to risk their lives, you know, to go after, you know, Kacchan. But he didn't go to any of them. Not even Kirishima, who, you know, is someone that he never saw as a threat. As someone who's like, oh yeah, he can take my explosions, whatever. You know? Like, someone who is actually a friend. Like, Doesn't go to them. Doesn't go to Ida, the class president. Definitely doesn't go to Yamamomo, the vice president. Like, no, none of these. Not even Todoroki. Like, the guy who could probably definitely take a beating from him, or, you know, beat him. No, he goes to Deku. And there he tells him that, why was I the one who ended All Might? Why was I the one who ended All Might? He says this, and I think that's him admitting that he feels responsible for everything that has happened. All of these failures that have happened. Like, I don't know if I'm articulating this theory or this interpretation well, but I feel like people who say things like, why was I responsible for this bad thing that happened? It's a sign that they think things that have happened were their fault. Meaning they've been trying to resolve things that were wrong or bad all by themselves. And the only thing that I can think of, like, in term, like the Boku no Hero plot up until that point, is failure. Everything that has happened to Kacchan is a failure. And this is me trying to, like, you know, see it from his eyes. Remember, this is a kid who grew up thinking that he was the big shot and he overachieved everything. And overachieving is good. That's a win. That puts me, you know, right in society. Like, that is where I belong. And anything that's not that is just bad. It's just, I didn't do it right. Like, it's kind of like, you know, you've always been excelling in school. You always get A's. And when you stop getting A's, it's very common for people to think of that as failure. And I think that's what happens to Kacchan. Yeah, he's not, like, actually failing, but for his standards, he's failing. If he's not overachieving, he's failing. And does he ever overachieve, you know, past the you know, the little test that Aizawa does? Does he really overachieve past the entrance exam? He doesn't. And it seems like, you know, if we look from his, you know, worldview, his viewpoint of all the events leading up to Deku vs. Kacchan 2, it's not even that he's, like, failing normally. His failures keep getting worse and worse, you know? Like, the biggest failure being, you know, All Might losing his powers. And so, anyway, I feel like that is why I like Kacchan. I know I didn't even mention that in the beginning of this episode, but I remember, and I said this in, like, episode 1, but I remember, like, when I first met Kacchan, I didn't like him. He was, like, cocky, and he was, like, he had no redeemable qualities, and he was, like, you know, beating up on our main character. I didn't actually even like our main character for, like, the first episode, or like, until the end. And I just kept thinking, like, oh my god, it's like Gon and Killua, but, like, Killua is, like, a bully, but he's mean. But then you see this transformation that comes about, almost kind of, like, not out of nowhere, but, like, you don't really see it until you think about the kind of person Kacchan is and his mental psyche and, like, how it leads him to do certain things, and, like, you know, using just the dialogue that, you know, we hear, or, like, the actions he takes, or even, like, the moments where we don't see, you know, his facial expressions. And this might be, like, another special episode I'll do, because Kacchan, for some reason, and I'm sure I'm right, Horikoshi really does not like showing Kacchan's face. Like, I don't know how the anime does it, but I think it and this is on purpose too. And I feel like it's kind of like he might be showing more emotion and, like, more thought than, you know, Deku sees. And how Horikoshi conveys this is by making sure any shots where it's like you should see a reaction, all we see is, like, the side of his face, his back, and, like, I right now the most recent examples. Okay, recent. I'm not even talking about, like, Deku vs. Kacchan 2, like, examples. That was, like, aeons ago. But I'm talking about, like, chapter 320, 321, or 319. Okay, well, anyway, the point is, there are panels in like the latest chapters where, you know, Kacchan's saying something incredibly poignant, incredibly like pivotal in terms of his relationship with Deku. But do we see his expression? All we see is, you know, the back of his head, you know, his shoulders. We'll see him making angry faces, but it's kind of like standard. But when it's like, how does Kacchan really feel about Deku right now in this moment? We don't see it, you know. And then like in the latest chapter, and I'm recording this on a Sunday, and the chapter 322 is coming out tomorrow. I remember there's a panel where, well, we see Todoroki's face, and he's like really frustrated with the situation at hand, and then we get a panel of Kacchan right next to it, but like his face is like turned away, and we just see like the bandages on his arm, and we don't see his eyes, we don't even see anything. We just see his ear and his hair, and I'm just like, Horikoshi, why do you keep this away from us? Why don't you let us see what Kacchan is feeling? You know, like, I know that boy is having like, you know, a million thoughts running through his head right now, but you won't show it to us. You just hold it to yourself, probably laughing at us, being like, oh, you want some emotional resolution for Bakudeku? No, you just get his ear and his hair. But anyway, failure. I think we should, you know, take in stride Kacchan's, you know, character arc in relation to failure, and see that, yeah, it's failure. Things are only failures to you, based on like a framework you have, and like it. And this is kind of the Umineko, you know, part of me seeping into this Bakudeku podcast. Umineko Nakokoro ni is really great, by the way. You guys should read that, and you can also talk to me about that. Maybe one day I'll do an Umineko podcast. Anyway, a thing from the Umineko, which is like a visual novel, mystery visual novel, is the theme of like multiple truths, and I feel like that's applicable to like, you know, just the general concept of failure. So basically, like, if you feel like something's a failure, it's a failure, you know, because of your framework, like relative to the current framework you have looking at life. And if you're able to change that framework, you may not see that as a failure, and that may be just like, you know, a lesson you learn. And I think people, and you know, myself included, when we're really down on ourselves and we're having a really hard time, it feels like the way we're looking at the world is the only way. That is the absolute truth. But in reality is that there may be a reality, but like, you know, everybody's way of looking at reality is also reality. Like, there's multiple realities, multiple truths, and like none of them are wrong. But maybe the one that is, you know, that would allow you to succeed, whatever that means for you, maybe that's not the one you're using right now. So if you feel like you're in a moment where you're like, oh, this is a failure, it might be a time, you know, after you finish processing your feelings or whatever, because that's really important. You need to do that, and that's really like, you know, important coming from me, who has a hard time processing their feelings. But like, if you're feeling something's a failure, maybe it's time to see, maybe it's time to examine how you're looking at the world. So I think that's what Kacchan does, and I think that's why I really love Kacchan as a character. Like, I love Deku, obviously, I mean, doing the Bakudeku podcast, but I really love Kacchan because I have never seen a character in like shonen anime that is, I guess, so relatable. Like, remember I said I disliked him, but when I saw Kacchan have that meltdown after Deku versus Kacchan won, I immediately knew, you know, how he was feeling in that moment. Because I had that, like, I came from, like, a pretty cruddy high school. I went to, like, a, you know, quote-unquote good university, and, like, I was, like, quote-unquote special and, like, an overachiever or whatever, but then, like, it turned out that everybody around me was an overachiever, and they also had rich parents and, like, you know, rich friends, and, like, whatever. Everybody is, like, amazing, and, you know, if everybody's amazing, then you're not amazing, you know, and I had to do a lot of like framework changes in order to be able to move on and continue doing, right by me. And the fact that Kacchan does this when, he truly is a genius and he does it by himself, and even when it's like really hard, like he goes through with it. Like he talks to Deku even though it's like that's the hardest thing for him, admitting that he has feelings for Deku. I mean, what? Admitting that, Deku is really important to him, and letting All Might, hug him even for like 5 seconds, even going through any of these changes, like confronting these uncomfortable things about himself that he struggles so hard in Deku versus Kacchan 1. It's amazing, and it's really why I think he's a good character, and like he's a character to also be admired. It's not just Deku, like he's a hard worker and he improves on his faults. Like that's really nice. A character that has problems and then he actually like goes through them to become a better character no matter how hard it is, because it's worth it in the end. Wow. Keep on going, Kacchan. You're a king. And with that, I'm gonna leave you all with this special episode. I hope you're all doing alright in this pandemic. Stay safe. Don't overwork. If you're an artist, be careful of your arms. Like, please take breaks if your arms and hands and wrists start hurting. Don't be like me. If you're typing and your mouse using also hurts your arms and hands, stop. No, really stop. If you think that you're not hurting, you think you're fine, and you can keep on going, still stop anyway and take breaks and stretch. Like, please stretch, and also please examine your posture. A lot of like injuries that people get with like, computers is bad posture. And yeah, stay safe everyone, take care. I'll see you in the next episode, whatever that is.